Hi and welcome to another exciting React.js beginners tutorial. If this is your first time in React, you know the drill. This is not your place to be. I advise you first of all get yourself acquainted with the first topics we have discussed in this course, and to do that there are links in the description box of this video. Click those links and start from the beginning. My name is Martins and this is curly brackets. Alright, you're welcome once again. Before we go into React Forms, I want to make mention of something I forgot to talk about when we discussed props. Okay, when we discussed props, if you remember in the first lessons, we talked about how you can create components. Like here, I have sideblock.js component, and the sideblock component is here, is actually empty. We have two divs in it with the class name sideblock and card, and those divs, those classes are defined in our CSS, right? Okay, so I have the sideblock.js component, and that sideblock.js component is rendered on our app component. As a result of this, we have this right here. So before I discuss the extra thing I want to talk about in props, let us revise what we did in props a little bit, right? So let's give some props, let's give some properties to this component right here, shall we? So let's say title equal to topics in React.js, and we have JSX. Okay, let's call this JSX, but let's call this item 1. Item 1 equal to JSX. Item 2 equal to props. Item 3 equal to components. Item 4 equal to useState, useState, and then here we have instructor Martins. All right, so these are our props. So we have title, item 1, item 2, item 3, item 4, and the structure as our properties, right? These are the properties of this component. So let's go check it out in sideblock in the actual component. So to make use of this right here, let's check our, you can see it's still empty, it's not showing, right? Yeah, so let us make use of these props in the actual sideblock component. So to do that, we write props right here, and then for here we can say h1, like we agreed, or we discussed that these props right here has become an object, right? Has become an array of objects, all right, and it has everything that we have listed here as its items. So now we can say props h1, we want it to render props dot title, right? We have title here, meanwhile let us see the components of these props. All right, so I want to say console.log props. Let's take off this one. Let us see what this props has. Okay, now having listed our props items right here, these props items right now becomes items of these props, right? So let us console log it and see what this props has in it. All right, inspect and console. We have an object here, and that object has instructor Martins, item 1, item 2, everything we listed right here. This guy now has them. Okay, so for this we can now say h1, or let's call it h2. H2, we want it to render what? Let's put a curly bracket for JavaScript. Props dot title and then we want it to render h4, want it to render item 1, sorry, props dot item 1, something like this. Good. And then h4, just put something like this and say props dot item 2 h4, want it to render props dot item 3, another h4, want it to render props dot and then h3 this time around we want it to render instructor props dot instructor. All right, let's check it out. Save it. Let's check it out. Wow. All right, all of our items are displayed right here. Okay, we have topic, we have everything we listed, and you can see this is how props works. All right, now if we desire to have this block here multiple times other than just one, there are ways we can do that. We can just copy this here and render hook and other one. So instructor Martins, let's leave it there. So when we save it, we have this. All right, we just create one side block component, and with it we can display multiple blocks, all right, of that same side block component. So it's one of the ways we can reuse our codes, and one of the ways we can create things easily in React.js. But then there's another way of getting this done, so that is using props and children. Okay, so we can use props with children, and this is how it is done. Let me just take everything here away. I'm taking everything here away. That renders everything here useless, right? So let's take off everything here and take off everything here. Let's just have one side block component for now. Okay, yeah, we're back to where we started. So now I can say, I'll take this off. I can tell React I want this to have props, and I want this props, I want in the body of this component render props dot children, render props dot children. Okay, so at this point when I say render props dot children, React is expecting that anywhere I render this side block component, it is expecting it to have children. And how do we do that? In this place right now, we no longer need to self-close this side block component. Instead, we need to open it and close it. And inside here, we will have to define those children. So we no longer have props.title here anymore. Instead, we'll write the normal codes, right? So we can say, in this place now, we can say topics in React.js, and here we have JSX, okay, let's check it out. We have it listed the way we did. Okay, now what happened here? We created a component that holds this, actually holds the CSS design of this for us. So anywhere we render side block right now, this green thing here, all right, displays. Now this is one of the ways you can reuse your designs in React.js. Okay, so we now say side block, we want you to have props, and in the middle of this place, right, in the body of this component, we want you to render props.children. That means we are telling it this component here is going to have children, all right, so expect those children, and when you get those children here, display them here. Okay, so when we render this component here, side block, and then we close it, what do? We now write our JSX inside of it. Now if I still want this, if I still want to make use of this component here, I can still declare it 1,000 times if I want, and then I can do things differently. I can decide to write a different thing, and I can call this one reusable code, my friend. All right, so I can leave this here. Voila. Okay, I wrote a lot. All right, on your own you can correct this, but you can just do it immediately. All right, let's take off one so that, yeah. Okay, so these are different ways you can make use of this, right? So these are one of the ways you can make use of props in React. Okay, so how and when to use it is entirely up to you. All right, let us quickly go into what we have for today, and that is forms in React, shall we? All right, welcome once again. Today we are talking about forms in React.js. To understand forms in React.js, you need to understand useState. But I'm going to repeat something I said during our useState tutorial. If you have not seen the tutorial, I'm going to drop the link to the tutorial in the description box. Please click on it, ensure you understand useState properly before coming over to this lesson. Back to what I was saying, I'm going to repeat something I said in our lessons in useState. Okay, I mentioned, if you remember, that useState is like a bucket which has content and which has opening, and the content represents the value of the state, and the opening represents the function through which we can make changes in the bucket. All right, so I'm going to apply that same method right here in React. React treats forms, input boxes, select, and the rest of them as a state value. For example, I have before me here a text box, all right, or input box, and I can say name is John Mark. Okay, now before I typed John Mark, this input box or text box had a value. The value was empty. That means if I want to represent it in React or in programming, I can say the value was this. All right, so currently the value is empty or null, but then I start to type in it, the value becomes this particular thing that I have typed. This is how React sees form elements. This is the reason why it is important that to understand forms in React, you should first of all understand useState. In this application, what we want is that when we click submit, we should see everything that we entered here, and this is a select box, and anything that we select here and anything value we entered here, we should see them when we click submit. We should see them show here. So when we write John Mark, email address and say John M at johnmark.org, and then John Mark is a full stack developer, so when we click submit, we should see everything that we have submitted right here. Now, why we are doing it this way is because we don't have database, we don't have API, we don't have anything that we are going to submit this to yet. So we are going to use this simple example to understand everything we need to know about React Forms. So let us go there. All right, so I have before me here the code that made the form we are looking at possible. All right, so now I have here, where is it? I have here the text type email, I have here text type text, and so on. All right, when I use value means the content, right, of this text box. So let's check it out. If I use value John Mark, what this would mean is that automatically we are going to have John Mark here. But in this case, we don't know what the value will be, right? We don't know what the user is going to enter. So in order for this to happen, I need to make this value a state. So I'm going to call this user name, and this is a state, right? Because I don't know the value that the user is going to enter. So I need to use a state to represent it, so that anytime the state changes, we would know in our code that the user has entered a value. All right, so the same thing here. I'm going to use a state to represent this and say user email. Now that I have done this, I need to now declare the state. All right, so to do that, first we import useState from React, and the next thing we do right now is to declare our state. So we have called this username, so call this username equal to useState, and the moment it should be empty. Now let us do something, right? It should be empty, and then I say user email useState. I want it to be empty, right? Now, but this is not enough. Okay, let's put a value here. If we say John Mark, okay, let me use John David right here. Let's check out. We have John David right here, because we told this input box that your value is username, and username is our state right here. So whatever we give this guy as initial value, that is what our text box will have. So let us take it to empty string, and then we have empty string. But that's not all. Now we need to make provision for what would happen when the user changes this, because currently we can't change this the way it is, right? To change it, we need to get the changes, we need a function. That function is set username, right? And to be able to get the changes that will happen when somebody changes the email, right, we need a function. So we call that function user email. What should happen when we change this? So when we change, or when the user changes the text box, so I'm supposed to say on change like this. So when this text box changes from empty or from this initial state to something else, we need to get that change. So it's a JavaScript value, so we put our curly brackets. And what do we need to do? Now to get that value, we'll say event. Now this event should be, I can say E, right? So it can be the event. So should anything happen on this, I want you to get it, and we use fat arrow because it's a callback function. and we'll say set username. Set username. Now, what should username get? Now, this is a function, right? This is a function, and this function is expecting an event. Okay, I'm going to explain this. Let's just keep going. So this event has a target, right? And this target has value, and the value of this target is the change that the user has made right now. So every time the user changes the value, right, this guy here gets it. And when it gets that value, let us tell it what to do. We should tell it to console.log console.log username, all right, for us. Okay, so let's try it. Let's inspect. Right, so let us change something here. Look at that. So every time we make a change, right, React takes note of that change because of this code we wrote here. And we say we can, some people use this event, so every event, anything that moves, move it. Actually, it can you can say a here and just use a here, right? It won't really change anything, right? It just in programming, a lot of developers, the most common factor is event or e. All right. Okay, so I can now say my name is John Mark, and then we have it right here. So every time this guy here changes, React takes note of it because we are through here. We told our guy here to take note of every change that happens in this input box. All right, this is how we assess our forms in React. All right, so let us do the same thing for email. Okay, another way I can equally do this, I can say function, can create a function and call that function handle change. Okay, handle name, call it handle name, and we say this function we want you to set username to something for us, and this function handle name to do what? You should take event as a parameter, and that event we say target dot value. All right, now this is it, and what I need to do here right now is I can just say handle name. Let's say John David. Same thing. All right, so I don't know which one you would have me do, but I think I should just leave things the way they were. Okay, so let's do the same thing for a guy here. So I will say set email, where is it? Sorry, on change. I'm going to say actually this will work. Set user email the target dot value. Now you can see this particular one I didn't put this in closing brackets. To be honest, it's the same thing, some people use it. So let's tell our guy to, okay, we need to console log this too. Console.log username. Okay, so this should be user email, so let's say John David at johndavid.com. We have it right here. We have John David here, John David here, John David at johndavid.com right here. All right, so let us proceed and do one for the options. Now you see I will have a select here, and this select, we should give it a value too. Now, however, I also want you to understand that even if I take off this value here and take off this value here, because some people do that, it doesn't really change anything, right? As long as we use set name, all right, to collect the value of the input box, automatically the value of the input box is whatever the state variable is. Example, if let us all right, so if I say John, I still see John, right? If I say me at me.com, all right, it's still there. Now the reason is there is as long as I'm using the state function right here, React already assumes that the value of this guy is the state variable that owns this function, of which that is here. Okay, so but for the sake of this lesson, I'm going to leave things the way they are. So what I need to do right here, I need to create another state, and I say const job set job equal to useState, and first value should be empty. Okay, so we can see the code here. First option I gave it, I said hidden. Now what this hidden means is this, I would like my user type as I would describe my user type as what this means actually is if I click on this, I'm not going to see the default option anymore. Okay, so you can, it's actually HTML, so you can check it out. Now every time I choose a value, look at the options. Here is select. So for select option, right, what we do in select option is we say select like this, and we open and close it, right? And here we put option, and then we put option, and then we put option. Hello. Okay, let me say item 1, and here item 2, and here item 3. So let's check this out. Let's see. Okay, let me take this out and put it somewhere else. All right. And okay, I want it to be in this class. I want to, so we're going to have 2 select boxes now. All right, so look at this one. We have item 1 here is automatically selected. The reason it's automatically selected is, if you remember, in this particular one here is the first item here, but now it's automatically selected as the first option because we didn't use the hidden attribute to it. But that's not what I want to talk about right now. Now what I want you to see right now is, because we have no value here, right, programmatically this is useless to us, because this item 1, item 2, item 3 are the things the user can see, right? React is not saying these ones. These are just a design for the user to see. Okay, at the moment React can see it. Why can't React see it? Because really it has no value. The value, or what we can make use of programmatically, or what we can enter into our database when the user submits this form, is whatever we have in this value option. So if I call this Mark, option 1 is Mark. I have no idea why I'm using Mark a lot in this lesson, but maybe one of you is named Mark, and this is John. Okay, and this is Peter. All right, now you see when we save this, nothing changed physically, but we have something that we can make use of programmatically right now, and that is these values right here. So when we select this as our option, right, and when we click on next, what gets submitted in our database is Mark, not necessarily item 1. I have no idea how I'm explaining this, but it is actually basic. Even though it's basic, I have to put it out there for someone who has forgotten maybe. All right, the next thing we need to do here right now is we need something has to control this, right? To do that, we need, so what we need right now is to say on change. All right, on change, callback function. So put an arrow function, and then we'll say set job dot value. All right, okay, so let us see what is there. And we'll say console.log job. So let us see what happens when we select. We'll make a change. Okay, so let's select front-end developer. We have front-end developer because that is our value. And now when we select back-end developer, we have back-end developer, and then we have John Mark. Say John Mark. I don't need camel casing in email. John Mark at email.com, and then the name is John Mark the second. All right. So sorry. So now that we can make use of, now that we can see what we have entered, it becomes easy for us to, so every time we click on submit, we want this to display right here. Okay, so let us make that happen, right? So what I need to do is, let me just create another state for this, and I will call it const user info, right? And is a state that is empty initially, but then we need a function through which we can make changes to it. So I'm going to now say I'm going to say, I don't think we need this anymore, right? So I can say function handle submit. Undo submit is a function I just want to create, and in this function I have, let me create a scope variable right here. All right, so let me just create a variable here. I'm going to call this variable const user object, right? And this user object should have name. The name should be whatever we had in the username. Sorry, this should, what am I doing? It's an object, for crying out loud, so should be username, right? Be a comma, and then you should have email. This email should be user email, and should have job, which should be equals to, okay, let's call it user job, which should be equal to, should be job. So we have created an object variable, right? And this object has all of these guys. Okay, and then what we want to do every time we click on submit is that this guy here should collect all the values from this person, and then we should ensure that set user info performs a function for us, and that function is to take everything this guy has and give it to this man, right? Is that easy? I'm going to say this again, right? Okay, it's actually, we can do this globally and put this here, okay, but we can do any of them. So at the end of the day, we are going to have a value here, user object. I hope you understand that. All right, so the next thing I need to do now is to say every time we click on this button, so we say on click, okay, and we want it to run this function and submit. But then that's another way of doing this. Okay, I can equally say remember I declared form in the beginning, so I have all the input boxes and select box inside the form declaration. All right, so one way I could have done this is to say, go to my form and give it an attribute on submit equal to, and do submit. What this would mean is that I don't need this, where is it? I don't need this on click here anymore. Why? Because that's the only button here, right? So every time I click this button, whatever I have, whatever function I passed on submit in the form gets executed, even though I didn't pass any on click stuff in the button, but the button is inside the form. That is one thing that React does. So once we click on this submit button, right, this function I have here runs. Of course, I can also pass it as on click. Let us see what we have here. Let's console log this guy. There, console.log. Console.log. I wanted to log in user info for us. So let us be sure of what we have. So I want this guy to console log this. So let's say John Mark. If your name is John Mark, please, this is not intentional. I have no idea why John Mark is in my mouth all through today. John Mark.org, and John Mark is a front-end designer. So let us check what we're doing. Okay, I don't want this. So now I want you to notice something. I'm going to do this again. John Mark at johnmark.com. I want you to pay attention here. UI UX designer. Now click submit. You notice for a fraction of a second we saw the values of name. We saw some values on our console, right? But the page refreshed. Now that is what brings me to what I'm going to talk about next. You see, every time you click on submit button of a form in website, in HTML, or your HTML website, or your JavaScript website, or any website at all, the page refreshes. This is the reason why in the days of PHP, I don't know if you if you have done PHP in the past, you will remember. Did I just say in the days of PHP? Please, we are saying in the days of PHP actually. Some of us are coming from PHP background, and a lot of people still use it. But if you remember in PHP or in some of these languages, we would have said action, right? And we would have put a page. Let's say user.php here, right? And this would have been our action page that when we click on submit, that action page will process the information that we have entered, either store it in database or display it somewhere. Your form is a different page from the page that processes your form, right? That is how it is in PHP and in some other web languages, right? So what I would have done here is I would have had a form.js, and then I will have another form here. What I would have done is a user form.php, and then have another one that process can you call it process.php, where that page or that file where there are codes there that will now accept everything I have entered here, all right, and then sends it to database or do whatever I want with it. But in React, it's not like that. So this is the reason why every time we click on submit button, right, the page refreshed. We couldn't see what the console here was trying to show us, right? We couldn't see it because every time we tried to see it, the page refreshed. I was supposed to say E or event, and I was supposed to say event dot prevent default. All right, this here is to stop the page from refreshing every time we click on submit button and just execute our code. Say John Mark .org. John Mark is a backend developer, and when we click submit, it doesn't refresh anymore. And now we have everything we need here. We have email, we have name, we have user job. Okay, so that means for us to access this, all we need to do, what we have here right now is this guy here is storing something right now, and what it's storing is something like this, right? It's like username, it's the same thing that we have here. All right, of course some developers would have just done this like this and rest, right? So but instead we just decide to let's just leave it the way it is. All right, so in order to access this right here now, all we need to do is to simply say, let's say h1, we want h1 to access user info .name for us, and then we want h1 user info .email, user info All right, let's check it out. Now our guy has crashed. Okay, the reason it has crashed is because, let's check our console. Cannot read properties undesigned, reading name, cannot read, blah blah blah. Okay, this is one of the reasons why your application breaks. Now, if you have experienced this in React, then I can tell you welcome. This happens a lot in React, all right? And one of the reasons why it happens is here we are accessing user info, right? But at the moment, user info doesn't have all the things we are asking from it. It doesn't have name, it doesn't have the email, it doesn't have user job just yet, right? But immediately our page renders, it is asking it for what it doesn't have. So this is running, and this is running, and the page is saying, I don't have these things you're asking from me. They're not even available yet, right? Because to start with, we have to enter something in the text box for this guy to even be available. We have to enter user email for this to be available, but they're not available right now. So yet we have a code here requesting for it, right? And that is wrong. So one way to do this is, if you put question mark in front of username, that means, what this means is you have to check whether this is true, right? You have to check if it's available, if it has content in it. And if it has content, then it has to display something. Let us save it and check it out. Okay, let me quickly add some styling here. I have a class here. I have a class I want to use here. The class is right here. Yeah. So I want to use the class to display the text. All right. Our page is back, right? So say John Mark, John at johnmark.com, and John Mark is a front-end developer. Wow, we have them here, right? This is beautiful. We've done the job, but it's not enough, okay? Because this is not enough, because even if this guy here is empty, right, we haven't entered any value or chosen any option. If I click on submit, it still submits, right? It still submits empty data to this place. Now you won't see it right at the moment, but let us do something that will enable us to see what's going on here. So let me quickly say this place right here, I want to run a JavaScript here, and that JavaScript says if user info is true, that is if it has sorry, I'm not supposed to do this like this. I think I took too much. It should be from here. So let's just run some JavaScript here. User info. So this says, this ternary operation says if user info is true, that's if user info has content, it should display this div, right? And if it doesn't have content, don't display anything. Okay, so what I need to do is I need to say my name is, or let me just say my name, my email, my job. So our code says if user info has data in it, then display this div. If it doesn't, display empty div. So now that we have checked user info here, we don't need to keep checking them one by one here anymore, right? That will mean double checking. So we'll just take off these ones from here. Yes, so let's run our code. Now look at this. We haven't entered any information yet, right? We have nothing inside yet. So this is empty, this is empty, and we click submit. It still runs, right? It has my name empty, my email empty. Now the reason why this is so is, even though we have not entered anything, right, we actually have something. Example, useState has something. It has an initial state, and the initial state is empty string. Well, it is empty string, but it is something. It's a value. Though the value is an empty string, but it is value, right? React treats it as a value. Okay, so we need to find a way to stop this. And so one way to do that is, there are many ways to do it, but we need to test right? Every time a user clicks this button, we need to test if this thing here has value, and if they don't have value, all right, we shouldn't run this. Okay, so one way to test that, there are many ways. Okay, but one way to test that is I need to say if it's just JavaScript, right? We need to use the trim function. Let me Google it for you. All right, so all right, now these are two examples. Let text equal to empty string hello world empty string, and then let result equal to we decided to trim text. When we run it, what we have is our code is going to eliminate all the empty texts, right? All the empty strings. Okay, you can see this one here. This is demo 1, right? So demo 1 is displaying this, demo 2 is displaying this. All right, so this is with the empty strings, this is without the empty strings, and this is the one that runs the trim function. So that's what the trim function does. It eliminates the empty strings, right? So what we can do is to tell our code to test if there are empty strings, right? If empty strings is all that we have in the text in the input box. So one way to do that is we need to say user name dot trim. That's so if username dot trim dot length is equal is equal to 0, right? So if all this guy has, when we eliminate the empty strings, if there is nothing else, right? When we trim username, if there is nothing else left, so if all that is left is 0 characters, or we test it for user email, all right. So if this is true, I want you to do this alert filler inputs, else we want everything we have here to run. All right, so let's check it out. Let's refresh this guy and let's check it out. So see, fill our inputs. Okay, but if we say John, let's try this, still say fill our inputs. So John at u.com, let's try, still say fill our input. So we must select something here, and now we have our guys displayed. All right, so this is one way you can do this, but there is still another thing I think I should mention. We don't have text area in this example, but if you need text area, let's assume we need text area. You know, in HTML you put your text area like this, right? Then you write the content of the text area all here. Okay, but in React it's not that way, right? We put text area is self-closing just like the other guys. So, and then we put, you can now put your placeholder, enter a short info about yourself, then we can say value and then equal to something, and then we can also say on change, all right, just like we did other guys. Okay, so but let's leave this out for now so you can see it. So on your own you can try out with text area, right? I didn't style anything about it, so you can see it's quite different. So you can just try to style something and try out text area, but this is how it is done in React. But for now, let us leave it out. All right, but let us switch this up a little bit. This might be confusing, but what about a situation where you have, you know, those kind of forms we see online? We have 30 text boxes and there's a lot of stuff the user have to enter, option buttons and all of that. How do you handle such things. Now, does that mean you will have to create use state for every input box, for every text box, for every text area, for all of the 100 form elements you have? Do you need to declare use state 100 times? That means you have use state, 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 use state upon to line 100 of our code, right? You have use state. Well, if you decide to do it that way, no problem. But in the spirit of writing fewer codes, there are many other ways to get this done, right? But if you feel like to stop here and practice what we have done already, no problem. Or if you feel like to continue, let us go. So one way to get this done is you can actually use one single, right? You can use one single state for every form element you have, okay? And then assign a name to those form elements and then use those names to control them, right? Let us try it. So I can say input. I can now use set input. Then this is state. So it cannot be empty string like this anymore. It has to accept objects now, right? Now what we now need to do is we now say function handle, let me call it handle change. Handle changes the function, and now we'll say name should represent, this should accept an event, right? And we create a variable, right? The variable is name now, and that name is target.name. Then we have another variable. We are going to call this value, and we'll say target.value. So this represents our values. So anywhere we use value, whatever we assign on value, this is what this represents, and whenever we assign on name, this is what it represents, right? So then we now say set input. So every time we run this stuff, we want set input to perform this for every single value. We want it to run the following, right? We want it to, remember, this is an object. Initial state of our input is an object, an empty object, all right? So whatever we need to enter into this place should be an object. And how do we do that? First of all, we need to collect all other values, every other value that we have already, right? In this object, we want to collect, should be value. Want to collect them, and then we say name, every name, assign value. Now, if you don't know what this is, you need to do some revisions in JavaScript. If you don't know what this is, I suggest you do some revisions on your JavaScript. Try to read up on JavaScript spread operator, spread and rest operators, right? Just try to read up on JavaScript spread operator, okay? And here it is, all right? It will help you to have a little understanding of what we're talking about. Example, let's check out the example right here. Okay, so you have const numbers, and numbers is an array that contains 1, 2 and 3, and here we are saying console log sum spread numbers. All right, so what this means is console log the sum of everything we have in numbers. So let's check it out. When we run this, let me take this one out for now. All right, when we run this, we have 6. Okay, so this means what these 3 dots actually means is everything in this array. Okay, everything I already have in this array. All right, so and when you sum it, you have 1, 2, 3, which gives you 6. Okay, let us take off the sum for the time being. this is actually the same thing as this. All right, let's run it so you can see that 1 2 3. Okay, actually this is how this is done. The more you do it, the more you get used to it. All right, and this is all the codes I need to run right now. I don't need all of these guys anymore. I don't need all of this anymore. I don't need this anymore right now. All I need to do is to say on change. I don't need to run this anymore. Instead, I will say handle changes function, and now I need to give a name to this guy. So I have to give it a name, and that name, why do I need to give it a name? Right, I need to give it a name because using the name I can now identify, like we have 100 text boxes, 50 text boxes, and all 20 select options, radio buttons, and the rest. We need to assign name to each item, to each element, right? Because using the name, we would be able to identify, right? Our code will be able to identify each and every one of the text boxes and every other element. So every element must have a unique name. So here I can now say user underscore, or let me just call this username now. So the value, okay, becomes input dot username. Why? There is inputs. Okay, inputs. Okay, it should be set inputs. Now be inputs dot username. So for this one, I say on change, just run handle changes, and name should be user email. Then the value should be inputs user email. So let's do one for our guy here. We say undo changes, my job, and then the value now should be inputs dot my job. So now what we need to do here, instead of having username here, we should have inputs dot username. Why? Because they are all items of the input object now. And then here we have inputs dot my job, and we have to do the same here. Inputs dot username, inputs dot this, and then input dot my job. All right, now so this way we have eliminated all the ambiguity that comes with having to declare 150 use states just because we want to accommodate 50 form input elements in our application. So let us run this code and check it out. Okay, let's write here. There's a mistake somewhere. We shouldn't be saying this. Mistake somewhere. Oh, okay. This is clashing with this whole thing here. Is clashing. We have value here. Okay, actually, this is supposed to be value. We can call this item, right? So for every, so we want item to represent all the all the items already in the input, so we want it to carry all the items that are already in the input. So we shouldn't call this value to avoid the clashing. So let's call this items, right? So let's check it out again. John Mark, yeah, it works now. John Mark at johnmark.com, backend developer, and then it works. All right, so if we have 50 text boxes, we don't, and then 30 select boxes, we don't need to every single time declare 100 use states or 50 use states, right? Actually, that's a bad way to code. Okay, but of course at the time you are still starting is allowed, right? But then when you are done practicing that type, I think you should also try to practice this type, and as you go you will understand better. All right, this is where we come to the end of this tutorial. If you like what I'm doing here, please subscribe to my channel, comment, like, right? Tell people about this channel, share the videos and everything. I acknowledge every support that I get from you guys, right? If you like what I'm doing here, if you think I'm doing well, please put a comment and encourage me. And if you think I'm not doing well too, I like to hear what you think. All right, I'm open to suggestions. Okay, so see you in the next lesson where we talk about use effects and other things.